Hey everyone, I'm so excited to share our podcast has been nominated in Boise Weekly's annual Best of Boise contest. And while it's an honor to be nominated, I have to admit, it would be even more fun to win. If we've helped you connect to the city you love, go to the link in the show notes to vote for us by May 23rd. Thanks, Boise. Cycling in Boise got a game-changing upgrade with the 11th Street Bikeway, but has the rest of the city kept pace? Today on CityCast Boise, we're breaking down our best and worst roads, giving you the lowdown on a secret chinned-in pathway. Plus, we've got a great way to make your voice heard and improve local biking. It's Tuesday, May 21st. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Bike commuter Joe Jazuski is here with me today to share some tips on finding the best cycling routes to get around town. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for having me.
I want to jump in by laying out some criteria about, what really makes a road shine when it comes to biking.
Yeah, the thing that I really look for is roads where bikes can be separated and protected from cars. I really try not to share any space with cars because that's really the most dangerous part of biking. Biking is super safe. It's really kind of hard to get injured on a bike after you know how to ride. But when you introduce the presence of cars, that's what can make it dangerous. So I try to find routes where I share space with cars as little as possible. Like I said, having that physical protection and being separated from cars, the more space on the route that I can realize that, those are the best routes.
Interesting. Are there any other factors that make roads really good? Maybe how smooth a road is or, location. Is location a big factor?
Well, I would say if I have to share the space with cars, either in a bike lane that just has paint marking or in the lane itself with a sharrow, for instance, I look for roads that are the slowest because if you get hit by a car that's going 20, you're probably going to have injuries that are less bad than if a car is going 50 or 45. I think in general, the roads around here are in pretty good shape. I think ACHD does a pretty solid job of keeping the potholes filled and things like that. I visit family in California and the roads are significantly worse. And there's some damage going on there that I think, I don't see too much of that where we are. So I think we're lucky that way.
I bet ACHD will love to hear that they're doing a better job than California.
It's something I don't think that we appreciate enough here. And people like to complain a lot about ACHD. But if you go other places, things are a lot worse. So I think they probably will.
Another great thing a street could have is a bikeway. And now Boise has the 11th Street Bikeway. What do you think of that?
Yeah, 11th Street is a game changer. I'm super excited about it because I think it can be a template for what other streets can do. And the reason I like it so much is because, like we talked about earlier, it keeps bikes separated and protected from cars. It keeps bikes on that elevated sidewalk level. There's also, throughout most of it, a row of parking that is an additional protection from the traffic going by. And it's also a separated space from where the pedestrians would be walking because to the side of it, there's the normal sidewalk area. Bikes have their own space. It's separate from traffic. It's separate from people walking. And also what it has that I think is really key is connection. It connects the green belt into downtown and then into the north end. There's one block where the YMCA is where you have to share a road with cars. And then you get on that pathway by Boise High, which delivers you into the north end. From that point all the way south, it's protected down to the Pioneer Street pathway, which is where Payette Brewing is, that connects right there to the Greenbelt. So I'm super excited about it. I take that route multiple times per week because it's really comfortable, it's really safe, and I think that it's a template that other streets can use to connect some more north-south areas to the Greenbelt.
Is the curbed separate bikeway kind of the gold standard in your mind for safer biking in our area?
Yeah, I think it is. And, the other facility that's really high quality would be like a protected bike lane. We don't have too many of those. There's one in front of City Hall downtown. And that's sort of like, you have that space that is on the same grade as the road, but there is a curb there that's a physical separation. The thing that's cool about 11th Street is it's on the same grade as the sidewalk. So it's actually raised a little bit. That gives you better visibility, I think. And really, the Greenbelt is the gold standard. There are no cars on the Greenbelt. It's a beautiful environment. It's comfortable to ride. You can be any age and any ability and ride the Greenbelt. So that's the gold standard. And then I think the key to really getting more people biking around here is going to be the north-south connections to the Greenbelt that will take you into the neighborhoods on either side of the Greenbelt.
How is 8th Street for a north-south route through downtown?
People like to talk about 8th Street as being good. I'm not a huge fan of 8th Street.
Really?
And one of the reasons is you do have to share the road with cars. It would be south of the Grove Plaza. That section of 8th Street, you're sharing the road with cars. You also have two really busy roads to cross, and that's Front and Myrtle. We have a 7-year-old son. I don't feel really comfortable with him sharing the street with cars like you have to do on 8th Street for that section. But on the 11th Street pathway, I'm completely comfortable with him there because he has that protection from cars. So I think 8th Street was the intermediary step. And I think that 11th Street now is like, okay, yes, this is what it can be. Any age, any ability to have some connection to the Greenbelt.
And I'm glad you brought up the Greenbelt again, because we really couldn't have a conversation about biking in Boise or in this area without talking about the Greenbelt. It is the main east to west route, and it covers a lot of the Treasure Valley. So it's not just limited to Boise. Do you have any insider tips about where to connect with the Greenbelt, or maybe areas to avoid?
Yeah, I think that Pioneer Street pathway, which connects to the 11th Street bikeway there, that's a great pathway for all ages and abilities. I'll relate one story that I saw. It was Mother's Day, and the Greenbelt was just packed. And as good as the Greenbelt is, when it's packed, it can be a little bit dicey because you have people on scooters that are going up to 50 miles an hour. You have pretty serious road bikers who are using it for training. And then you just have families out for a stroll or for a ride with kids and grandparents and all that. So you have all these different uses sort of converging on this 12-foot pathway. So it can be a little bit dicey when it's really busy. And I think the key is really to get people to slow down. I saw one crash, and it was a fairly young boy coming down off of one of the bridges that cross the river. And he was coming down off that bridge, and he just didn't stop in time for the cross traffic that was going along the Greenbelt. And unfortunately, he ran into a cyclist who was really going pretty fast and was on a road bike with spandex and looked like they were really, out there for some training. And I think that fortunately was, everybody was okay, which is obviously, really fortunate. But I think that the speed that guy who was on the road bike was at was not the appropriate speed for the conditions.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something, as my family's been walking or biking, that every so often that gets a little sketchy. If we're trying to herd all the kids over on the bike to, get over because we're going slower. And yeah, that can be, there's been a couple near misses we've had that I'm glad were near misses.
Yeah, there's, the Greenbelt's not that wide. So when you've got a bunch of people on there, it's really important, I think, that people slow down a little bit and be a little bit more cautious.
So, Joe, stepping beyond downtown, are there any other pathways that we should be aware of that are really good for biking?
Yeah, there are a few pathways that meet my criteria of being separated and protected that are not in downtown and not the Greenbelt. And sometimes they fly under people's radar. One of them is the Federal Way pathway, which if you are on Federal Way and you are, east of Vista, it goes really for quite a ways up Federal Way out towards Micron there. And that's going to be on the north side of the road. And it's its own pathway. It's a shared use pathway. So there are cyclists and pedestrians on that. And you kind of have a view of the foothills north. So it's actually a pretty nice ride. And then the other one that's a little bit shorter, but people might forget about, is the Park Center pathway that goes along that road just east of Bagley Park. So you can actually take the green belt, and then once the green belt stops and it converts to that pedestrian-only pathway at the Bethune Church Trail, you can cut up through the River Run neighborhood, which is a pretty nice street. It's pretty slow traffic, a lot of good trees. And then once you get to Bagley Park, you can get on that pathway that is separated and protected from Park Center, and that connects you all the way up to Bound Crossing. There is actually what I call a phantom bike route that's along Chinden. Yeah, not a lot of people know this, but if you look on Chinden carefully, especially right out of downtown, you'll see that there's a sidewalk next to the road, and then to the opposite side of the road from the sidewalk is a pathway that is pretty old. I think it was put there in the 80s, and it's sort of been reclaimed in a variety of ways. There are some utility poles there. Some of the businesses use it for parking, but you can see a pathway that was right next to the sidewalk on Chinden at one point that was for bikes. And it's, like I said, it hasn't really been in use for a while, but that was how it was originally intended. So if you're feeling adventurous, you want to check out a phantom pathway, get down to Garden City and get on Chinden and take a look.
Reclaim that old path.
Go for it.
Hear that? Believe it or not, summer is just around the corner. Luckily, Armor All, America's most trusted auto appearance brand, has what your car needs to get that perfect summer shine. Plus, now through May 31st, we'll give you $5 for every $20 you spend on Armor All products. That means car wash pods, protectant, tire shine, you name it. Find out how to get your $5 rebate at armorall.com. Armor All, less work, more clean. Terms apply.
This episode is supported by FX's Clipped, the scandalous story of the 2014 Clippers owner's racist remarks captured on tape and heard around the world. The series charts the tape's impact on a dysfunctional basketball organization striving to win against their reputation as the most cursed team in the league. Starring Lawrence Fishburne, Jackie Weaver, Cleopatra Coleman, and Ed O'Neill. FX's Clipped, streaming June 4th, only on Hulu.
All right, Joe, let's get into some of the worst roads. Which roads do you avoid completely and why?
Yeah, it's really disappointing because the top of my list is Orchard. And the reason I avoid Orchard is for several reasons. One of which is there's no bike facilities. There's no bike lane, even a paint-separated bike lane is not there. There's also a lot of driveways. And so you have a lot of entry points of cars coming into the road, also turning off the road. So they're sort of crossing your path a lot. And then there's not even a sidewalk for part of it. There's some strip malls there where their parking lot just sort of merges into the road with no separation on Orchard. And so there's really places where you don't even know where you're supposed to be. Are you supposed to drive through this parking lot on your bike? Are you supposed to be in the road? There's no sidewalk. There's no bike lane. There's all these driveways. It is a disaster. And it's really disappointing too, because there's so many great destinations on Orchard. You know, you've got Foodland Market, Chiang Mai, Tango's. There's grocery stores like Fred Meyer. There's doctor's offices. There's so many places to go on Orchard, but I really avoid that place with my bike because it's unsafe. I think the other route that I avoid is also Vista. Again, there's no bike lanes. There's a lot of driveways. Vista does have a sidewalk on both sides of the street for, I think, pretty much all of it from the airport down to downtown. But the speeds also on Vista and Orchard are not great. You know, you're pushing about 35, 40 miles an hour, maybe even 45 miles an hour. And considering the absence of bike facilities there, it's just not somewhere I'm comfortable being.
Yeah, that sounds pretty treacherous.
Yeah, it's a hard pass for me.
How should these routes be improved in your opinion?
Well, I think that, again, we can take that 11th Street template and we can just lay it right on these other streets. If Orchard had the kind of bike lane that 11th Street had, and I think it's doable because for a lot of it, you've got 2 lanes in each direction plus a turn lane. So you have 5 lanes of space plus sidewalk space. I think that there's enough space. I just think it's a matter of redesigning it with people in mind who might not be driving cars. It's just getting the political will to get something like that done.
Joe, it really seems like the routes that you said were the best or the safest or ones that are really comfortable for lots of people are in like the North End, East End, some downtown. And it seems like the ones that are more treacherous are more on the bench. Why is that?
Well, I think that traditionally the bench has had probably the least amount of political power, and that's probably socioeconomically related. I think the ironic thing about that is the lower you go on the socioeconomic ladder, the less chance that you have your own personal car to drive, because cars are very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Gas, insurance, maintenance, the thing itself. Bikes are so much more accessible for people who don't have a lot of money. And for the folks who don't have a lot of money, they probably live in the places where the property values are the least, and that's the bench, Orchard and Vista. Well, those environments are most hostile to bikes in this city. And so it's kind of a cruel irony that the people who really could use the facilities the most are the ones that have the least access to those facilities.
Absolutely. You didn't mention it, but I feel like we need to talk about State Street because State Street is dangerous, even in downtown. And we've had way too many people killed there while riding bikes. So what makes State Street so dangerous?
Yeah, it blows my mind that we have a street like State Street that goes through downtown and has no bike facilities on it. There's no bike lane, let alone a separated and protected bike lane.
Mm-hmm.
I think what makes State so dangerous is that it's really a commuting route for people who are trying to get out of Boise. They live downstate in Meridian or Eagle or Star, and they're trying to get out. It's rush hour. They're pushing the envelope and they're trying to get as fast as they can. And that's a bad setup for safety.
Mm-hmm.
When you're being safe, you want to have time. You want to not be in a rush. And that's generally not the situation on State Street. So State Street, again, sort of like Vista and Orchard, there's a ton of destinations on that street. Doctor's offices, you've got Rite Aid, you've got Albertsons, there's schools that are farther downstate. There are apartments. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of new apartments going in right around the YMCA as they do their redevelopment of their property. And so it's going to need a new configuration to be safe for everybody.
And on at least one section of State Street through downtown, there is a chance for updates to better protect cyclists, right? What's going on there, Joe?
Yeah, this is a sort of rare opportunity for people to have their voices heard on this. It's tempting to sort of sit back and be like, well, what can we do? How can we get more bike infrastructure? What can I do as a cyclist to help move things along? And this is an opportunity with the State Street reconfiguration from 8th to 14th to have your voice heard. I was at a meeting yesterday at ACHD when they were talking about it, and they're really paying a lot of attention to the survey for this particular project and what people have to say on the survey. There are 3 different options. One option has 5 lanes and no bike option. And then there's 2 options. One has a protected bike lane that has a curb separating it. And then the third option is a multi-use pathway, which is basically like the green belt on both sides of the road. So my preference, of course, would be to either have the multi-use pathway or to have the protected bike lane. But it's really important that people go and fill out that survey and let them know the kind of treatment that they want, because I know ACHD is taking those comments really seriously.
And we're going to put a link in the show notes to the survey for people to fill out. It needs to be filled out by May 23rd, which is a Thursday, if you aren't listening to this on the day this episode drops. Do you have any other tips for someone who is new to cycling in Boise or is trying to find their best routes?
Yeah, I've really found that the satellite function in Google Maps is a great way to plan your route, because you can see what is on that road. You can see how many driveways are coming in and out. You can see if there's a bike lane, if it's protected, how big the sidewalk is, how many lanes there are going each direction. So if you're planning a route to go to work or to go to school or something like that, take a weekend afternoon and go do the route before you actually have to do it for real. If you're trying to get to work on time, you don't want the first time that you ride it to be when you have to be at work by 8 o'clock. So try it before you actually have to do it. And then I think you're going to realize that getting around by bike is such a life changer. It benefits you in so many different ways. It's a lot cheaper. It's built-in exercise. I ride my bike to work. It's about 12, 15-minute ride each way. That's a half hour of workout, basically. If you commute along the Greenbelt, you're riding along the river in the morning. It's fresh. The sun's coming up over the foothills. It's just a great way to experience your morning that really beats sitting in your car on Eagle, on Chinden, on State, on the connector. And then you arrive at work and you're grumpy because it was all backed up, and you're pressed for time because you got to get to the gym after work, but then you got to get home. So give it a try, because it's going to change your life.
You've been a bike commuter for several years now, so you've seen things change and improve in Boise. What grade would you give our community when it comes to biking infrastructure?
Boy, that's a great question. Yeah, I've been riding my bike in Boise for about 15 years, I would say. And I would say we have gone from a D to a B minus. It's been a significant upgrade in the time I've been riding. There really did not used to be bike lanes around here. Mm-hmm. A bike lane was rare 15 years ago on any street. And now a bike lane is not really rare. Like, we have painted bike lanes on a significant number of streets. And obviously the Greenbelt is an incredible resource. So I think that we've gone from below average to now solidly above average. If you go to other cities, even bigger cities, I think that Boise's right up there with them, with the progress that we've made in the past 15 years on biking.
Yeah. Well, we went from failing to passing. B minus.
Right. Yeah.
That's a passing grade.
I don't know about you, but I would have been pretty happy with a B minus in school. So
I know we can like slightly needs improvement, but we're getting there. Getting there.
You're feeling good about yourself at that point, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast show and talking all about biking in Boise and how to do it safely. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the time.
Before we wrap up, I have a quick favor to ask. CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help the podcast if you participated. When you have a few minutes, please go to citycast.fm/survey. If you take the survey, you'll be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and other cool CityCast swag. There's a link in the show notes to the survey. That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. We'll be back tomorrow morning with breaking Idaho primary results. You won't want to miss it.